future. There are no people in the future. No people at all. There are no people in the future. Where did all my people go? There are no people in the future. Let me try my people call. Where are all my people? Where are all my people? I guess I'll fly away now.
Hey everybody, welcome. It is Friday, December 23rd, 2022. Welcome to Raging Chicken's Out to Coop podcast and the last show of 2022. Yes, indeed. And you know, I forgot to mention this past Monday, we had Cyril Michaleko on the show for Out to Coop Live, and it was our 100th Out to Coop Live. That was pretty amazing. We're well over like 300 shows and things like this kind of total, but that was kind of nice to have him on for the 100th there. Hey, Emily, welcome. Yes, we have, we're exiting Hanukkah, entering Christmas, heading to New Year's and Kwanzaa coming. Yes, indeed. And Festivus. Can't forget Festivus, indeed. Yes, this is Kevin Mahoney, creator and founder of Raging Chicken. Each week we break down the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics. We're going to break format a little bit today. I mean, it's our end of the season show. And instead of just blowing through all the headlines and stuff, we'll look forward a little bit. Yeah, so. I'll say more about that in a minute. You can help support this show by becoming a patron for as little as $5 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/rcpress and a special thank you goes out as we close out the year to all of our patrons who have made this show possible, who continue to support our work, who help us grow. It's fantastic. Thank you, Emily. Yes, I agree. The show with Cyril was great. It was awesome to have him on. Miss having him on. That connection with the Bucks County Beacon has just been fantastic. You can also help support our show by heading over to our YouTube channel if you're not there already. Smash that subscribe button, like the stream for this show, and hit that notification bell so you know every time that we go live. And look, don't let Paul Martino and his oligarch friends buy our schools and push extremist politics in our community. Yes, 2023 is a school board election year, and Raging Chicken has teamed up with Levelfield to launch a truly community-rooted PAC to invest in organizing and supporting local and statewide progressive candidates and unmasking the toxic organizations injecting our communities with right-wing extremism. We're putting small dollar donations to work to beat back the power of big money. You can get more information and drop your donation at ragingchicken.levelfield.net. That's ragingchicken.levelfield.net. Yes, and as I show in today's show, we'll talk a little bit about stuff in the news, but mostly just want to kind of look back a little bit, kind of reflect a little bit, see if there's things that are on your mind as we kind of close out 2022. I know I'm always kind of in a reflective mood at the end of the year, and I do know it's a completely arbitrary kind of thing, but nonetheless, it is on the calendar, and it is part of our kind of like, I don't know, the time space that we inhabit, so I do the reflecting thing. Anyway, for more PA Progressive Talk, tune in to the Rick Smith Show's live stream at 9 p.m. Eastern, his YouTube channel, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you get your streams. And you got to subscribe to his podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. If you want all the information, just head on over to ricksmithshow.com for the latest across all his platforms. And if you haven't already, got to be checking out the Sisters of the Night Caucus podcast, the amazing PA women stirring the political cauldron behind this podcast, Rock the House. And they know where the bodies are buried. Make sure to follow them on Twitter at the Night Caucus. That's at the Night Caucus on Twitter. And subscribe to their podcast on Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcast. And for all you gamers out there, I'm checking my watch. There's still time. You're looking for something, last minute gift or something like that, head on over to the Game In. That's with two N's. The Game In is a Quakertown-based black family-owned gaming store. They're friends of the show, and they've got everything from retro N64s, the latest consoles, video games for all platforms, loads of collectibles, action figures, Funko Pops, walls of Funko Pops. And kids get discounts with every A on their report card. Check them out on their Facebook page and follow them on Twitter at the Game In, again with two N's. If you got a question about a game, looking for something hard to get, shoot them a message or drop them an email at thegameinpa@gmail.com. And a shout out goes to Jonathan Mann, who wrote our intro song, There Are No People in the Future, wishing him and his family all the best this holiday season. Check out all his great stuff on his YouTube page and follow him on Twitter at SongADayMan. That's with two N's, at SongADayMan on Twitter. For Out to Coop Live, just a reminder that we will not have a show next week on Out to Coop Live. I'll talk a little bit about how we're going to deal with next week. So last week with Cyril Michaleko, the editor-in-chief of the Bucks County Beacon, that was our last show of 2022. And we're going to be looking ahead for 2023. We got some great folks lined up. Got some great suggestions from our community. Thank you. Keep them coming. Great messages from folks shooting me kind of potential guests. I just got one this morning, and I'm definitely going to reach out to that person. We're going to see if we can get that person on. I don't want to kind of, tip my hand too soon or get out in front of my skis, so to speak. But I'll let you know as soon as we've got some of that stuff locked down. Yes, indeed. So look, everybody, if we want a progressive future, we need progressive media, right? You can support Pull No Punches homegrown progressive media today. Just become a patron of Raging Chicken for as little as $5 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/rcpress. Get your end of the year donation. Get your end of the year giving. Become a patron at the end of this year. The Raging Chicken is patreon.com/rcpress. You can become a patron for as little as $5 a month. Look, we're here for the fight and we need you. Become a patron for the price of a good beer once a month, good coffee once a month. Help keep the media in the movement in the media. Become a patron for as little as $5 a month by going to patreon.com/rcpress today. Yes, welcome. It's great to see some of the our regulars showing up for this Friday. I want to kind of apologize for the late start and the kind of lack of communication this morning about why we're getting started so late this morning. But for those of you who are not in the southeastern Pennsylvania region, actually, it's a good bet. Depending on where you are in the country, you're dealing with some version of what we're dealing with. So we have here in southeast Pennsylvania, we've got winter storm warnings, and it's not the storms that we're seeing kind of throughout the Midwest and even the western part of our own state, where we're seeing kind of tons of snow, blizzard-like conditions, and so on. We're on the other edge of that front, which has just been nonstop rain since yesterday, and the temperature is supposed to plummet fairly soon, and we are going to get some it's going to be freezing rain conditions. And what that meant is that we got a notice from our the superintendent of schools here in Penridge, and I know this is true through a lot of the school districts throughout the area. They could just canceled school today. So at the last minute, plans for today kind of went a little kind of off. We had to rearrange. The kids are here. My niece is over. We had a couple deliveries come in that I kind of had to, so it was kind of that kind of thing. And then yesterday, I slept in a little bit today. I'll admit it. I slept in a little bit today because yesterday I went and did a little grocery shopping right after my kids went to school for like 8 o'clock in the morning. The grocery shopping on the way home. It was raining, right? And I wanted to get out there early before, in case there was any freezing rain and stuff. So I came back, got out of my car, and got on the sidewalk, I dropped off the recycling beforehand. And so my driveway was fine. So I went out and got the recycling bins, and it was our trash day the night before. So I looked out and said, I'll maybe get the trash can while I'm here. So I'm holding the recycling bins in one hand. I go out to get the trash can, and as soon as I hit the concrete sidewalk, right? Because concrete maintains its coldness longer than other things. So it was cold, and it was freezing rain on it. It was like a cartoon. I didn't even have a warning. My feet went right out from underneath me, slammed down on my back. Luckily, for the most part, I'm okay. I'm just really sore today. So I did not hit my head, luckily. But, I went through all these things. Like, and that, that happens. You have like a fall like that, and there's like all this stuff kind of goes through your mind about what's going to happen next. And it's funny. I was telling the story to folks here yesterday that as I was driving up our street to, kind of on way back from the grocery store, I was looking around. I was like, man, it's weird. It's like really dead today, right? Because usually there's like, cars parked on the street, just people, there's cars in the thing, but probably people out doing Christmas shopping and all that kind of stuff. So it just felt really empty. And so there I flipped down, boom, kind of like land on my back. And then the first thing that goes through my mind is like, nobody's going to be here to help me if I can't, if I'm really bad hurt. I'm just going to be stuck here lying on the sidewalk, right? Um, but luckily, I had to like slide down to the street before I could get up. It was it was something else. But anyways, so that's why I slept in. That was one of my little tales of the end of the year. That's how 2022 is going out for me, and it seems completely in line with what this year has been. So yeah. So one thing I want to say kind of up front is that since we are not having shows tomorrow, I'm sorry, on Monday or next week, we're going to be away for the we're going to be away for a few days, kind of visiting family and things like this. And just take a break with family. Thank you, Emily. Yes, I'm glad I'm okay too. I hear what you mean about that kind of being terrified for that. For I could imagine. But so anyway, so what I was going to do, I was thinking about this, and I've done a version of this before in the past. So what I'm going to do over on our Patreon page, and I will give, I'm going to post these up for our patrons, but they will be available kind of like after a couple days for everybody publicly. I'm not going to put it into our regular feeds. I'll just put it into for our patrons to do a little bit of a kind of end of the year review. And I'm keeping it pretty simple. There's a couple shows. I was just looking back over the years, over this year, and to see kind of who we had on as guests and things we had. It's just it's always interesting as a reminder for me of kind of just what the year has been by going back and looking at our shows. And so basically I'm just going to post some kind of like bonus content, if you will, to our Patreon page. Just looking back for some of the things we've done. One of the things I am going to put up there, it'll probably be the first thing I'll put up, it's a 2-part documentary I did with a woman by the name of Colleen Bradley. And you've heard me talk about her on the show before. She was the vice president of administration and finance at Westchester University, and she was fired for basically blowing the whistle on an unethical financing scheme they had going on at Westchester. And it turns out it was not just Westchester University, it was multiple Pasha universities in terms of my own, also including my own at Kutztown University. And really her story in many ways is a tragic one, in part because the substance of her allegations, and I even struggle with the word allegations because she has all the receipts. So it wasn't just her word against the Pasha universities or the state system of higher education. It was the fact she had all the email receipts, she had all the kind of like records showing that there was a coordinated effort to basically mislead the public, mislead faculty, and mislead students about the financial state of the university system. And what was ironic about it is that they basically like were proclaiming, we're out of money, we're broke, to the politicians and to faculty and students, while and they're using that as a justification to cut faculty lines, to increase fees on students, to justify the elimination of programs and the austerity measures and all this kind of stuff. Well, when they turned to their bond raters, right, the people that were going to give them loans, hey Nick, what's up? The people that were going to give them loans, basically those what they did is they showed them another set of books, which showed the bond raters actually how much money they actually had, right? And this goes back. This was a long fight, and I hate to keep on bringing this up year after year, but it really is such a significant backdrop for what is happening right now to the state system of higher education, where you have a chancellor of the state system of higher education, which is basically dismantling the state system of higher education. Right, we saw the consolidation of universities, 6 universities into 2 this past year. There's going to be some more things that are going on like that. I could tell you story after story of what's happened at Kutztown, but But anyways, so as kind of like, a reflective, looking backward, looking forward kind of move, I'm going to post that 2-part documentary up on our Patreon page. Again, it'll be available immediately for patrons, but then after a couple days, those will open up for the public too. But I will not be posting them on our regular YouTube page or on our podcast. So if you want to check us out, check out that extra content, you head on over to our Patreon page. Some good stuff. Another one that I'm going to post up there too as well, just so you know. If you remember a while back, I had on, hold on a second. Where is this? I hate the fact that I'm missing this thing. Well, anyways, we had Kadita Kenner on the show, who's just doing kind of amazing work on voting rights in Pennsylvania. And we had her on shortly after she took over the position. Hold on, my mind is, I'm telling you, is completely like blank in here. But she took over as the kind of the CEO, basically the head of the New Pennsylvania Project, which focuses on voting rights and kind of enfranchising, not disenfranchising, but enfranchising more peoples throughout the Commonwealth. She's just kind of an amazing individual doing fantastic work. She's done a couple pieces over at the Bucks County Beacon too as well. But we had her on. That was another kind of real highlight. And of course, I think one of my which I'm so thrilled to kind of built up this relationship with Alyssa Bowen from True North Research. Alyssa Bowen has been, just awesome as a guest on the show. She's been on 3 times. We're going to have her on again early on in 2023 to look at some of her recent piece in Truth Out, looking at dark money and school board groups to kind of launch our focus on school boards in 2023. So stuff like that, things that I think are kind of significant or kind of interesting, that kind of stuff. So I'll put up that extra content. What was the one? I'm just drawing a blank here for a moment. It's gonna kill me. Yeah, there you go. Gwen Marshall. Yeah, I just was drawing a complete blank. I was thinking about her kind of before the. If you remember, I just thought this was one of these, one of these shows that I would like to revisit and kind of put out. And it seemed like a good one for the holidays. I was just talking to one of my neighbors who were running a D&D campaign, and I'm running a D&D campaign, and so on. And we had Gwen Marshall on from Arcanus Press, and what was so I thought cool about having her on is they produced this this source, right, which was basically it's called Ancestry and Culture: An Alternative to Race in 5e, right? And there had been some really interesting discussions that have been happening kind of in the tabletop role-playing game communities about the ways that, say, Dungeons and Dragons was dealing with questions of ancestry, or was dealing with, questions of race. And, like everything else, is that there were certain, the way that race was treated as kind of this immutable thing, as this kind of separate and distinct, it has these characteristics which were more stereotypical than they were kind of filled out individual kind of, peoples, excuse me, so to speak. They were drawn from some kind of racist stereotypes in part in the past, and again, not in the most overt way, but nonetheless in such a way that as more and more, say, people of color got involved with the games, they began, hey, what the hell's going on here? And this kind of addendum, or this kind of like book that they produced, Ancestry and Culture, Alternative to Race in 5e, started talking about ancestry and culture as an alternative to ways of thinking about kind of drawing up more fleshed out characters. And I thought that was interesting in part because these questions that we've been having, or these discussions, I should say, struggles, fights we've having over questions of race, they play themselves out in communities in all sorts of different ways, right? And that tabletop role playing game community is a fairly it's a niche community, right? I mean, it's not something that everybody's even aware of that this thing kind of goes on. There's a culture around it and stuff, but nonetheless, for people inside that community, those are kind of important and meaningful discussions. And one of my favorite D&D podcasts is I think it's called Three Black Halflings, and they're a kind of a British team. They do they play Dungeons and Dragons, right, like this. But their podcast is more than just about their campaigns. Sometimes they have guests on. They're talking about issues kind of related to, say, people of color and gaming communities and things like this. And it's just fantastic. They're funny. They're engaging. The games that they generate and they play are awesome. And I first came onto those because when they were kind of early on, I think of their first year of their podcasting stuff, there was they came on Jasper Cartwright, as I think was one of the lead ones. He was on the Dungeon Run, which is a show that I watch. And that's kind of what first turned me on to them. And they were having similar kinds of questions. And it's like those kind of vibrant, interesting, engaging questions, they can be really impactful for folks. And at the time, I'm kind of previewing all this stuff at this point, but at the time I was really interested in having Gwen Marshall on, in part because of what I've already said, but also because, in the video game community and the tabletop role-playing game community and stuff like that, is a lot of people are drawn to those communities because, the things that we get kind of in mainstream kind of popular culture, like, sports and, I don't know, like things with school and things like this, it's not quite their shtick, and people find their way into these communities, these gaming communities, and build kind of really meaningful relationships. And in recent years, and I guess there's always been threads of this, I mean, there's been, even overt attempts by kind of white nationalists, white supremacist and extremist organizations to exploit the kind of these communities, to use them as a way to kind of try to indoctrinate or bring more kind of say more vulnerable kids over to their side and kind of like brainwash them into this stuff. So to see that kind of intervention happening within a community like that was really interesting. So that's the kind of stuff, those kind of shows are the things that I was thinking about are pretty interesting to potentially put on for those that extra content over between now and New Year's. That's big. So also the other thing I'll kind of put a pitch out to everybody too is if you do have kind of ideas for guests, I'd love to hear them, because I got message this morning for with suggestion of a guest, which I thought was fantastic. We had, I know Jenny Stevens, for example, over at the Bucks County Beacon. She's been great about shooting me articles that she's working on and things like this. And times I've been able to kind of follow up with what she's been passing on. Just be fantastic. So anyways. Oh yeah, Emily said she listens to the sports show on it's basically it's the ESVN show. It's Emma Vigeland. Emma Vigeland is the co-host of the Majority Report, and she's a total sports nut. And so she just basically got together with one of the other members of the Majority Report, and they do this show. I think it's on Thursdays. Yeah, Emily says Thursday at 4. ESVN show, and they do like sports from a left perspective. I mean, again, thinking about that, the sporting community, I mean, how many voices do you have of kind of progressives, those folks on the left doing that? So that kind of intervention I find really interesting too. And again, it's not like you do sports just as like a hook to get people to talk about leftist politics. No, she is generally like a huge sports fan, right? So the joy of being able to talk about sports, but not have to do it always within this kind of, right wing or kind of like extremist individual framework. So it's a great show. It is really good. But yeah. So that's kind of stuff, some of the stuff we got going on. I know I've got some great feedback from our show this past week on Out to Coop Live from our show with Cyril. And I know, Cyril and I really had hoped to be able to do once or twice a month on the Wednesday show. Frankly, my semester, my work just was really busy and focused this year. this past semester, and our regular schedule was not panning out quite as we would have hoped. There was a couple times we wanted to do a show, and then something kind of came up or fell through, or there was an internet issue or something like this. So, but it was I was all the more pleased to have him on Monday, as our kind of end of the year wind up. And I don't know if you caught this or not, for those of you who watch the show, but Cyril said this is, it's going to be great to be working more closely together in 2023. So, I've written once for the Bucks County Beacon. I did a kind of follow-up article from when I had Alyssa Bowen on the show. I'd like to do some more of those, right? As a way of, kind of maximizing these kind of interviews and stuff that we do, and to kind of finding different venues to help echo or help amplify the work that is out there. So that's kind of like a cool thing, and I'm hoping to do some more writing for them. Cyril and I are working on a couple other projects that we'll kind of collaborate with the Beacon, which will, once we kind of formalize that, I'll have the announcements on in 2023. But that's going to be, I'm really looking forward to that, right? Really looking forward to really expanding it. And frankly, I'm hesitant to even say this again because I kind of dropped the ball on this last summer, but I really would have loved last summer to do like a kind of a progressive media summit or something like this. And I think in my brain, it was a little bit too grandiose about what I was thinking. So maybe we'll do a little modified version of that. And I've been playing around with ways to kind of formalize, if you will. It's not really formalize, that's not the wrong word, but to like gather, if you will, folks interested in kind of independent progressive media. And so that those of us who are already doing this, right, have a space to kind of talk about the stuff, flesh out some ideas, collaborate, maybe find things that, gaps that we're not able to fill, and maybe we can figure out a way to make that happen. Another thing is always big in the kind of progressive media community is that, funding is always an issue, right? It's like, as amazing as it is for me to basically be able to do this show because it's a labor of love. I mean, I'm not getting paid anything for this, right? I mean, basically we have members that come on this, members who help support the show, and that basically goes to, our hosting space, any kind of equipment that we need, making sure that we can boost up certain kinds of shows. It all goes basically for the maintenance of this site. And how awesome would it be to be able to find a funding stream or come up with some sort of way where we could start, say, paying more, left journalists kind of in our area, not ones that are going to go right for the New Yorker. Well, maybe they will eventually, or, or the in these times or something. But those folks who will basically, are focused on what's happening here, kind of in Bucks County, in Pennsylvania, and to really build out that network. And that's a long-term project. It's not the kind of thing that you just plan on doing in a year and it's up and running and that's it. Building that kind of relationship, that network, is a long-term one. And so I think I'd really like to start slow this year, instead of trying to think, hey, let's do this big thing. Kind of recognizing some of my own limitations, I guess, about how much time do I actually have to do all this. So we're looking forward to doing things like this. One of the things that we used to do that I miss a tremendous amount is before COVID. There used to be this, and it kind of got dissolved before COVID anyways, but there used to be this thing that's called a PA Progressive Summit. It was in Harrisburg. It was like every February, right, January, February throughout the year. And, it'd be like kind of like a conference convention type of thing. You'd have panels of speakers that would come on, some from the activist community, from politicians, from people working in the, online media environments, and give kind of presentations, thoughts, question and answers. Then they'd have, Bernie Sanders came to speak one year, for example. Yeah, just stuff like this. It was a really great. You have some, big names that would come in and speak, but then, Raging Chick would always have a table set up where, we get to kind of talk with people and meet up with people and stuff like that. And at that summit, the PA Progressive Summit, we used to do just kind of like an open invite meetup, right? So that, after this, main session on that Friday, where there's this one kind of little pizza place and pub that we would just kind of reserve a bunch of tables and kind of in the back of the place, and then folks that listen to the show and part of the community would just kind of stop by. We'd have pizza, we'd drink some beer and things like this. It was great, and I miss doing that, right? I miss doing that kind of meetup, and we also did one year. We did like a holiday party. It was at, this is a funny story. So there was we went to, God, what the heck's the name of that place? I keep wanting to say Bellissimo, but it's not Bellissimo. It's, oh my God, I can't believe I'm forgetting the name of it. It's that wood-fired pizza chain. There's one down in Warrington. Oh my God, I can't believe I can't think of the name of it. But anyways, it's like one of the pizza chain. They kind of try to be a little bit more upscale, Italian food, pizza, things like this. But anyways, so my family and I, we went out to dinner there once, and they had a big fishbowl, right? Drop in your business card, and you could be, lucky winner for a holiday party. I'm like, oh, whatever, I'll toss it in, and I won, right? I mean, like, I don't win things, but I won. And so I'm like, oh, how cool would this be? So we got it, as up to something, it was up to 15 people or 20 people or something like this. So I'm like, oh, how awesome is this? So go in there. And so we kind of had this whole kind of bar room kind of one night. We had, folks from our community stop by, people we've had on the show. This is even back when we were doing mostly writing and just beginning the podcast, I believe. That was a blast. So anyways, stuff like that would be really kind of fun to do. And I'm always reluctant, especially when, obviously the expenses of the show come first, right? I mean, making sure that we've got the best internet connection that we can have. I'm probably going to have to upgrade my internet and probably upgrade kind of my internet kind of connection on my computer, and maybe my board this year, for kind of a bunch of reasons that things have been a little bit awkward on the production end of things, and plus it looks like I'm going to be producing some more shows in the 2023, so I need to get that down. So things like that, equipment, that would kind of count in. The podcast, Dick asked, when did you start the podcast? We started the podcast in really get going 2016, right? I had done a few interviews here and there before then. I had played around a little bit with the podcasting medium, but 2016, in the beginning of 2016, is when we really kind of took off. And we decided to start with a weekly show. That's where Sean Kitchen and I used to host. It was primarily just a Friday show. And we decided that it might have even been the end of 2015, if I remember. But we decided that we wanted to start doing a weekly show. So we started doing that on Fridays. And we used to do it early. We used to do it like 9 o'clock, 9:30 in the morning, kind of what I'm starting to go back to now. And we just go through the news. And it was fantastic because Sean was doing... He was really filling a niche in Harrisburg that just people weren't happening. I mean, he was doing this kind of digging, this kind of investigative work, and building these kind of connections of what was happening. And then he would come on, we report on it. So we kind of got this insider kind of perspective, what was happening in Harrisburg, then plus some more broad stuff what was happening kind of nationwide. It was a really good show. And then eventually he originally worked on the Rick Smith Show for a short period of time, and then he landed a job with PA Spotlight, and then he's been out there. That's what he's been doing. And Emily asked how's Sean doing. He's doing great. He's been working at the same place now, doing kind of research, progressive research, in the kind of broader labor community. Been working with great coalition stuff. and it's really good things. I follow him on all the social media. We don't talk as much as we could. We're both really busy, but he's also a photographer, posts great stuff, and so it's really good to see him loving on Harrisburg. That's pretty good. So anyways, that was when that's what we started to do, and it's been a good run. I think if I had to look back on the time that we started Raging Chicken, I mean, because we started, Raging Chicken itself in 2011, and we were primarily, we did reporting, we did writing back then. But when Sean got his job out in Harrisburg, he and I were kind of holding down the fort. We're doing all the writing and research and reporting for Raging Chicken, and we had Wendy, who was up at Bloomsburg University. Wendy was she was the person who was covering fracking for a while. We had some additional writers come on kind of periodically, which was really cool. But once Sean could no longer really kind of do the reporting of Raging Chicken, because of his other work obligations, it became a little bit too much for me to really manage that kind of like the writing, especially my work was just going nuts too as well. But we did start up the podcast, started doing that podcast. We were doing both there for a while. And really radio was, I love radio. I had a radio show all throughout college. It was awesome DJing in college. Then when I went to grad school, I was lucky enough to connect up with my friend Rich. I'm thinking of Rick Smith. Rich Cook, who's out there in Carlisle, also teaches at Shippensburg University now. But he and I were in grad school together out in Ohio, and Rich also had done radio stuff, and so we had a show out there. So I've always loved radio. I love the hands-on. I looked at, when I first moved out to Pennsylvania, I looked up the folks at the WDIY out in Bethlehem, because I lived in Allentown, and was really considering see if I could get into a show there, but I was just a little too busy. It was a little too much. So continuing the podcast has really been keeping with what I love, and it makes it. It keeps me kind of engaged in the way that I was with my writing, in a way that feels a little bit less like work, even though there's a lot of work that goes into the show, but it feels a little less like work and more of a labor of love. And so in 2023, initially I had thought of bringing back some of the writing for Raging Chicken, and now with the Bucks County Beacon kind of really doing amazing work, I'm kind of rethinking that, right? And instead of kind of trying to bring back the writing component, maybe to really, focus on that as a space of writing, and then expand some of the podcasting that we're doing here. So I ran into, there was parts in 2022 where I ran into the problem that you want to have, right? And when you're doing this kind of stuff, and that problem is that I had too many guests, or I had more guests than I had times to book them, right? And that was amazing, right? And I start even thinking about if we could get to this show to a point where actually we had a fairly consistent, decent funding stream that was basically going up and beyond just being able to kind of reproducing the show, making sure that we've got all of our connections and all that kind of stuff. If we actually had enough funding where we could actually pay somebody, it would be amazing to bring someone on as a producer, right? Where, as much as I love doing the production stuff, I think it's a lot of fun kind of putting it all together, but it's time consuming. And I thought about turning this Friday show, for example, into the second interview show of the week, which I think is what I would actually really like to do. I think like having someone come on kind of weekly, to do both kind of interview show, but then do a news roundup, maybe break at like first half of the show roundup or first half of the show interview, and then kind of what they do in the Majority Report, where they have like the first half they have a guest and they have like the fun half where you're just kind of talking about things going on, something like that. And it's been great having Amy Connect come on. She's fantastic. And I think our plan initially was to have this kind of regular show and stuff, and frankly, it just like in ways that I cannot even begin to understand. This semester was just really trying in ways that I can't put my finger on. Right? I mean, I can't say all this horrible stuff. And I think part of it was I just had some health issues this year, and I think that really just kind of took me off my game in some ways. And there's some other stuff just kind of just going on that just took me away from stuff. So anyways, that plan, I fumbled with that a little bit this year too. But it's been great to having her on whenever she can. And I know that, she, like hits me up every once in a while. Like, hey, don't have to work on this day. We want to see if we can do a show. Absolutely. But I would love to do, sir, for example, like a show with Amy especially would be great. We teased this a little bit on when she was coming on a little bit more regularly, wanting to do something that was more kind of culture based, look at some of the books we're reading, talking about some of the TV shows that we're watching. That would be a whole lot of fun. So things like that. The other thing I am going to do, and I'm gonna take a lesson and learn from myself this year and start it slow. This is gonna be a Patreon only content, and again, it'll be the same kind of stuff. It'll released initially for patrons. But then it'll open up for public, so it's not going to be completely behind a locked wall. But it'll just get, it's a little something to say thank you to some of our patrons. Maybe bring on some new people, and kind of similar. So I've mentioned this on the show a few times that, I started, playing D&D with my kids now again, and my brother-in-law, for example. And it's the first time I've ever kind of like a game mastered, right? Dungeon mastered and kind of ran a game. I played a little bit when I was in college and I just loved it. I love kind of like, collaborative storytelling. It's just like phenomenal. It's just so much fun. And so I'm DMing this, and I've kind of got my own little world started to be created. And probably by next summer, I'll be ready, maybe even sooner, be able to run my own kind of campaign that's from a world I designed. And so I thought, that'd be kind of a cool thing. I've watched a lot of YouTube shows where, that have helped me think about how to kind of be an effective kind of dungeon master, try to understand some of the rules and just, think about it. And I say, it'd be kind of cool to do like kind of like a newbie walk through as we're doing this kind of show, not pretending to be an expert, but, so I'm thinking about like something along the lines of like, Dungeons and Dragons and Dead, that kind of thing. Whereas an opportunity to kind of just talk a little about the game and kind of how we're thinking about it, and what are the opportunities for collaborative storytelling and what's happening in the campaign that I'm doing with my kids and things like that. I think it'd be a lot of fun to do. So I'm going to do that on Patreon. And the reason for doing that on Patreon too, as well, is that I know there's communities on Patreon that are focused on Dungeons and Dragons that might be interested in the content for that, but not even if they're not following because of the politics shows we do. And then on the flip side of that, because this show, Out to Coop Live and our Friday Politics Roundup are pretty, in a particular lane, and I like the keeping that kind of theme going, right? So that the podcast becomes it's focused. So if somebody jumps in the podcast in the middle of it, they're not wondering, okay, what's the connection between this interview with, this political activist and this Dungeons and Dragons? It could be a little bit odd. So just to kind of keep it in that kind of that one frame, give it its identity, I'm going to keep it on the Patreon site. But like I said, it's not going to be locked off to everybody permanently. So that might be good. So that's the kind of stuff I want to do. That's things that I'm thinking a lot about. And trying to stay healthy for the new year, because like I said, I've had got sick, and then I got the flu. My son got the flu. My daughter was out sick this past week. it's been that kind of year. So, but I hope everybody here, I hope you all are doing well, and I hope you all are kind of moving into the holidays, or you're already in them. I mean, we're kind of at that, end of Hanukkah, beginning of Christmas, then leading into New Year's kind of thing. And so this is where we're at. But that's all I got today. I just wanted to kind of check in with everybody, and to thank everybody who has been part of this project. I want to, I thank my patrons, who support us on Patreon. We've got some folks who are, you can support us for as little as $5 a month. We've got a bunch of patrons that are in there for $5 a month. We've also got some patrons in there for $50 a month, and I can't tell you how amazing that is, right? To be able to continue to do this, right? It's because it's essentially, a community supported hobby that hopefully is giving something back to the community, right? That is filling some sort of purpose, right? To help support and to amplify the work that's already going on the ground. And I've tried to be clear over the, since we started our podcast, is that what I see us doing here on this podcast is not like the organizing itself, right? There's organizers, there's political organizers that are out there on the ground that are doing a lot of the door knocking, that are doing a bunch of stuff, helping support the community and helping support political campaigns and organizing on the ground. That's not what this is, right? This is a space to help shine light on those folks and to amplify those kind of efforts, and to kind of have a space where we can kind of join together in community about these issues, about these ideas, and think through them, and so in a way that hopefully feeds back into the organizing that's happening in the community. Now, that's not to say that I don't go out and organize or all that kind of stuff. It means that that's what Raging Chicken is, right? And which is one of the reasons why we started leaning so heavily this past year into, or really a year and a half into, what was been happening with the school boards, is because people were organizing around that. So when the people started bringing on the show, in my brain at least, is like, I want to think about people who are doing some of that kind of research about these networks of influence, so looking into questions of dark money, tracking these organizations that are involved in pushing these extremist politics. The reason why is that if we can do that on this space, right, and if that can kind of help fill out the picture, right, do some of that background research and bringing some of those voices of people who are already doing the work, we could connect up that kind of analysis, that kind of research with the organizers on the ground, and that's a powerful combination. I teach a class called Activist Writing Media, and really what we look at in that class is the relationship between social movements and social movement media, or activist media, or progressive publications, whatever it might be, or not even just progressive, but independent publications that are connected to social movements. And there's always been that kind of interaction, right? Is that, there's always been a media wing, if you will, of kind of organizations, right? And personally, and I'll just throw this out there, I've seen there have been independent media projects working on the left who have hooked up with a particular sponsor, right, or group of sponsors, right, and it goes well for a time and then it doesn't, right? So I've always resisted tying myself, tying this show, tying Raging Chicken too closely to any specific political organization, political party, or sector of the progressive movement, because I want to make sure that this can be an independent space, and then I can say what I want to say. And just give you one example of this is, like, we had Rick Smith on the show this year when he blew the whistle about the incoming president of the PA-AFL-CIO, Frank Schneider. He was coming in there and had a long history of abusive behavior towards women primarily, right? And it was a known factor. People knew about the series of behavior, but they tended to sweep it under the rug. And women who had been victims of his abuse were afraid of coming forward. It's the classic perspective, right? The issue is that quote unquote, everybody knew, right? Everybody kind of in close there. But labor reporters would not touch it because nobody would come forward and say anything about it. And they were worried about funding to their publications or kind of their careers, right? They were worried about that stuff because somehow that the support of their publications, these progressive publications, was made part because of the labor movement, right? I never want that to be the case. If we know something is fundamentally wrong, right? I mean, like I said, I'm a labor guy, right? I am a union guy, right? As I've said multiple times, I bleed union, right? So just like Rick Smith, I mean, Rick Smith did not like having to go on kind of his show and use his show and his platform to make sure that Frank Snyder would never be the president of the AFL-CIO. And of course, Frank Snyder became the president, and then he had to step down because there were just too many people starting to come forward once Rick broke the silence, right? Once Rick went out there on his show and said it. So that same kind of reason, right? I don't want to say, here's another example. I can't think of a specific where this has happened in the past, but it makes me think a lot about it. Like, so for example, if I were to say where I would take a chunk of money, a whole bunch of money from an environmentalist organization, right? And they were really pushing alternative energy, renewable energy, and all that kind of stuff, which is all we want. Like, on board, renewable energy, stop, get off the carbon, all that kind of stuff, right? Stop climate change now, all that kind of stuff. But, there was some recent reporting. I came across this article in, don't remember where I read it, but they were looking at it was really fantastic reporting. Maybe The Intercept, I don't know. But looking at the mining practices around lithium and some other components of the batteries that we use to store energy from solar, right, or wind for that matter, and electric cars too as well. And there are those who saw that article. I saw some of the comments and responses to this article, and there were those people who were saying like I can't believe that we have to get off fossil fuels. Like, we need the lithium. We have to do this kind of stuff. And the reporter was not saying, no, we're not going to get off fossil fuels. The reporter was basically saying, this is part of what's happening, right? This is part of the consequence, is that yes, you need the lithium, right? But we're not focused on whether or not you need the lithium. We're focused on the conditions of the workers in the lithium mines. We're focused on areas of kind of American Indian homelands who are being pressured to kind of turn over more of their land so they can mine lithium, things like that, right? And those are important things. And I would never want to be in a situation where I would have to say, well, oh God, do we talk about this story when we know it's going to piss off these funders? No. So, there's a consequence to that, though, and this has been always one of the consequences of doing this work, is kind of like basically carrying it on my back, so to speak, and depending on the communities. It really is dependent on you. It's depending on this community. It's depending on folks to kind of support it and saying, we believe in building truly independent progressive media, right? And so my boss is you, and and it's the kind of thing where I know that it's limited, right? I had some other ways that I could have gone at other point, but I know it's limited how far of a reach that we can get and how quickly. But it slowly builds, right? I mean, I've gone this a slow route, I guess, and it slowly builds. And we've been able to kind of run some shows that have been pretty kind of outstanding. And I think that there were other people, I know this, I know there were other people that said, man, I wish we could have run with that, but we couldn't because of X, Y, and Z, right? I know that pressure. I've had people on the show, for example, where I'm well aware of how funding stuff works, right? And the pressures from that. So I've known that, there's certain things people come on the show, they wish they could talk about that, what they couldn't talk about, right? Because they're worried about their own jobs and stuff like this. By running this in the way that we've run it thus far, I mean, really right from the beginning in 2021 or 2011, we've been able to kind of maintain that certain kind of independence, right? With all of its bumps and, me having to learn new programs and tech problem, all that kind of stuff along the way. That's all part of it. And then hopefully that by being as transparent as we can be about that process, that hopefully that makes us more part of the community, right? More part of, people trying to do what we can do, right? To make this world a better place. So that's where we're at. Anyways, I've gone on longer than I thought of. I wanted to today. I've got here my kids stomping around upstairs, so I better go upstairs and check on them and make sure everything's okay. But listen, I want to thank all of our patrons. I want to thank everyone who's been part of the Twitter warriors who have helped get this show out. I want to thank all the wonderful people on the new Mastodon community who have helped started kind of get the word out about Raging Chicken over in that community. Everyone who joins our YouTube live. Emily is like the rock star of our YouTube stream, who is always here. Great information. Thank you for participation. Nick, happy holidays to you too as well. Thank you for being here live. Nick, of course, doing great work in higher ed politics and kind of organizing around that, and housing issues too as well, in the schools. Great stuff. And just thanks to everybody who shares the show, who has donated to the show. Even if you're not currently a patron, that you're no longer able to support, we thank you for when you were stepping up and doing what you could do. But you can really, everyone who's listening to this podcast or for this live YouTube stream, and then hopefully in the new year we're going to be adding Twitch to that too as well. All of you who have supported us either by sharing our work, by becoming a patron of the show and helping support it, by dropping us a donation periodically. Every once in a while we get these donations, which is fantastic. Thank you. It is that kind of support, that kind of engagement. The people who send me like DMs about, hey, check out this person, this might make a good guest on the show. I mean, I can't tell you how awesome that is, and how much of this place is part of you too, and part of the work that you've put in, part of the being here and being present as we go through these struggles together. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, and wish you all the best holiday season, and I wish you the best for the new year, and we'll be right back at it come in January. And for those of you who are on our Patreon, look for that kind of bonus content coming up over break. But like I said, anybody can go over and check out our Patreon, and you'll have access to these. Are just kind of after a couple days that the patrons have it. Look for some kind of going into the archives, looking at some back shows. Just so you got some content over this holiday break. So everybody, thank you. All the best to you and yours. Stay healthy. Be careful out there. I know there's the storm that's coming through. It's going to make for a frigid, cold winter or Christmas time. And a lot of people are traveling. Please, please, please be careful. My love goes out to all of you, and happy holidays, and I'll see you in 2023. This is Kevin Mahoney, creator and founder of Raging Chicken. Head on over to patreon.com/RC Press where you can help support the show. Happy holidays, everybody. Here's to a better 2023. See ya!